Hey everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at part 7 of the Hercules story from Ritchie's Fabulae Faciles. So this part is called Madness and Murder. So if you think back to what we've been talking about, we've seen a lot of different elements of Hercules so far, but one that really stands out is his anger, right? So he's done a couple of questionable things, whether it be, attacking priests or killing his music teacher. But that brute strength and anger, is something that really defines his character. It's a real important attribute of understanding who Hercules is. And in this chapter, we're going to finally see where it catches up to him, and it sets him on his path of the 12 labors, which is something that most of you, hopefully, or most people are really familiar with when it comes to Hercules. So at this point, he has just defeated the Minyae, right? This group attacking. This invading group. He took care of them, he led the army, and now we're going to see the aftermath of this. So let's dive right in, right? And again, before you do anything, like I always tell you, try to read this story out loud. The more you can read it and practice it and have someone read it back to you, the better off you're going to be. And you're really going to start catching the patterns of the Latin and hopefully feel more comfortable with the vocab too. Ritchie's does a lot of repetition with vocab. So the more you read it and practice it, hopefully you're feeling more comfortable with your translations. But to start, we have post hoc proelium, Hercules, copia suas ad urbem reduxit. So after this battle, right, meaning the battle against the Minyae where he defeats them, Hercules, he reduxit, he came back or led back his copia suas, his army, right, his troops, you might say, to the city, ad urbem. Okay, so remember, he's in control of the city, and after he defeats the minions, he leads them back to the city. Okay, then you have omnes Thebani, propter victoria maxime gaudebant, creon autem magnis honoribus Herculem decoravit atque filiam suam ei in matrimonium dedit. Okay, so all the Thebans, that's your subject. Remember, Thebes is the city that Hercules was defending, and Creon was its king who didn't want to go fight the minions, so Hercules did it instead. So all the Thebans, and then you have propter victoriam, which means on account of, right? On account of this victory, they were very glad, maxime, right? Extremely, the most, gaudebant, they were happy, right? So you might say they were very happy, is kind of one way to put it. Creon, right, the king, however, he decoravit. He decorated or gave or honored Hercules with magnis honoribus, with great honors, right? So even the king, he's praising Hercules for everything that he did in saving their city. And atque, he dated, he gave. And remember, when you have a verb of giving, showing, or telling, you're expecting an accusative, right? You give something, and a dative to someone, right? So you give something to someone, which is exactly the sort of formula we have here. So he gave filiam suam, his own daughter, to him, meaning to Hercules, and he gave her in matrimonium, in marriage, meaning he offered his daughter as sort of a reward to marry Hercules, right? If you've been following the stories from Ritchie's Fabula, you see that's a pretty common thing. Same thing happened with Perseus, right? In Andromeda, now we have a very similar thing here with Hercules. He's given, daughter by Creon, okay? Then we continue, and you have Hercules, cum uxore sua beatam vitam agebat. So Hercules, with his wife, uxore sua, it's just an ablative, right, with cum. With his wife, he was leading or was living, you might say, agebat, a beatam vitam, a blessed life. So he has a really good life, right, for a while. And the imperfect tense of agebat gives that sense of like the ongoing action, right? So for a while, he was living this really, really good life. Then you have said, but, right, here's our transition. Sed post paucos annos subito in furorem incidit, atque libero suos ipse sua manu occidit. So, but after, post, a few years. So paucos annos is accusative, and when you see something involving time in the accusative case, it's that duration of time. So when you say post paucos annos, after a few years, it's showing the duration of how long is kind of expired here. So after a few years, suddenly, right, incidit in furorem, right, he went into like a fury or into a madness. And again, incidit here, you can translate he sort of fell into it, or it's sort of saying madness fell on him. But incidere has to do with like falling upon or falling into. So maybe that's the best way to do it. He fell into a madness. It just means he went like temporarily crazy. And if you want to look up the Hercules story, you'll find out why this happened to him and get more detail. But the short version of Ritchie's is he fell into a madness, right? And occidit, he killed libero suos, his own children. Remember, ipse means he himself. So Hercules killed his own children. How did he kill them? Sua manu, with his own hand, right? So in other words, he murdered his family, right? Which is the horrible side of Hercules, right? This madness comes over him and that brute strength gets taken out on his family. This is why he's going to have to repent, you're going to see, and do the 12 labors to kind of get forgiveness for this. Then you have post breve tempus, ad sanitatem reductus est, et propter hoc facinus magno dolore affectus est. So again, after a short time, right, a breve tempus, so after a short time, reductus est. This can mean he sort of was returned. It's perfect tense passive voice. So it's brought back is really kind of one way to say it. He was brought back, you might say, to sanity, right? Ad sanitatem, meaning he kind of regained his senses and he stopped being in this furor, right? In furore. So he comes back to sanity. And on account of this deed, propter hoc facinus, right, because he murdered his family, affectus est, he was overcome, he was affected, right, overcome by what? Again, passive voice, you're usually looking for an ablative, by magno dolore, by a great sadness or great grief. So when he finally comes to his senses and realizes what he's done, now he's overcome by sadness because he realized he just murdered his children, right? Then we continue. You have mox, exurbe, effugit, et in silva se recepit. So soon, right, he effugit, he fled, right, ran away, exurbe, out of the city, right, so he fled from the city, and he se recepit. So this really means like retreated, right, is kind of one way I've seen it translated. Recepere means to take back. So literally it's saying something like he took himself back in Silwas, into the woods. But a better way to translate it, translate se recepit as he retreated, right? He took himself literally, but he retreated into the woods in Silwas. So he runs away from the city because of what he's done, and he runs off into the woods. Then you have nolebant enim kiwe sermonum cum eo habere. So the subject is kiwes, the citizens, right? For the citizens of Thebes, they did not want, nolebant, they were not wanting or did not want, it's imperfect tense of nole, right, to not want. They didn't want to have, habere, a sermonem, a conversation, cum eo, with him. So the idea here is he runs away because he's been basically shunned by the society, right? Nobody wants to talk to him. Nobody wanted to reach out to him. It's just this isolating time, and they leave Herc in the woods. Okay, so hopefully that made some sense. Like I said, read it. Once you get the vocab down, with Ritchie's, there's a lot of repetition. So hopefully you're starting to catch that a lot of these sentences are phrased the same way. But it really comes down to a lot of practice, just reading it aloud, finding someone who can read it back to you. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you're going to feel with it. If you have any questions at all, just put them in the comments below. I'd be happy to help you. But otherwise, keep at it and good luck.